Hey.
Hey, Rasmus.
I tata, nie gadaj już. Proszę stąd wyjść. Hello.
Hello, Robert.
Hey.
Let's give that traditional extra minutes. Hey, Dave.
Hello.
Okay, one minute, a few seconds more, see if any else join, but then we start. All right. So I think we have the main things are the APRs that are open. So Rasmus, I think this is the big rename. I was just looking at the files that we have here, and just by the amount of it. So you are renaming not only the binaries, I suppose.
Mostly like moving the files also to the right folders, and so basically reworking the native project and loader project. But I think most of the changes are to the native project because there is a native lib references folder, and then it's generating all the renamed files there.
I see. I see. Okay. Yeah. I just had checked the kind of the number of files here, and I was thinking that was covering all the other stuff, you know. Okay. Yeah, so this one is probably gonna take a bit of time to review, but on the other hand, perhaps it's very mechanical, right? So
Yeah, pretty much. I fixed there also the git ignore that's generating build files for macOS, and I think maybe for Linux too.
yeah, I tested that yesterday for Mac. Yes, that needed to be fixed. Yes, that's true.
Yes, same for Linux.
Sorry.
Yeah, it works also for Linux because it's also using CMake.
I see. Okay, so we have this one to review. And the next one is a whip yet. I took a quick pass, very quick, just to anticipate some stuff. But I didn't dive into. But basically, this is bringing the GraphQL instrumentation. Did you need to bring in any other pieces of infrastructure to that?
I think currently just samples, or actually the one sample, and probably not much more.
Which exporter are you using to test the integration in this case?
I was refactoring the one from SignalFX to the newest cron from Datadog. So that's the zipkin collector, but a little bit refactored.
I was
see.
thinking, I was writing on our internal Slack to create some internal exporter which just serializes the objects to not have, because when you're using this OTLP exporters, zipkin exporters, zig exporters, you're making some transformations, right?
So
Yeah,
I
exactly.
need to mute here.
It's okay. No, the dog is okay.
Go ahead, Robert.
So I was just thinking of creating some very simple dummy exporter which just uses even a binary serializer of the spans. Or does it make any sense to not test the exporter logic, which often makes some transformations, like changing, for example, the status to tags, etc.
So basically, you are saying avoiding the idea of having to kind of do local network in that sense to avoid all that setup and, let's say, flakiness of the test.
I think it would need anyway some kind of networking. So, and think it can also be flaky. I was just thinking that not coupling to some concrete exporter. Just in case, for example, if there's a bug in an exporter or tests are failing. But it's just it doesn't have to be in this PR, just something to consider before we create too much integration tests.
So I think if we want to do that, we should do kind of rather soon than later, because
that's exactly why I right now want to discuss it. I'm just not sure if it's easy to serialize the spans right now. If it will be hard, then maybe it's not worth doing it. If you will just, if you just try to use, for example, binary serialize and try to deserialize, what will happen?
So I feel like I've seen a memory serializer in at least one of the projects. I don't remember if it's the collector or if it's in the SDK, but something like that might be useful for what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, are we trying to serialize stuff from the old Datadog span representation or from the, an OTel span?
Hotel.
OTel. Okay. Thanks.
So I thought that there was something already to serialize on the SDK side, no? From the hotel, if you
Maybe there is.
yeah, I thought that there was. I maybe I can be wrong on that, you know, but I thought that there was something there already.
Yeah, and that might be where I saw the memory serializer.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm being distracted here by this guy here. It's a bit yeah. Okay, these were the PRs that we have open. I had looked at a little bit at some more cases about configuring different configurations of packages importing. And one thing that I keep I mentioned this before. I did this a little bit for the .NET framework, but I wanted to experiment also changing the runtime JSON for .NET Core. So with those, in theory, we need the files, but in theory, we could also solve the problem of not having the projects to build, but we could kind of redirect also for .NET Core, you know. It requires that we update the runtime JSON. So if you wanted that to be really a solution, we'll need to write some tool for that. But that also allows us to, even in that case, make work even without the build project. So I didn't have time really to dig deep into that. I just started exploring, but it seems viable, you know. So then we'll, in principle, and I don't think right now we have the cycles to invest on that, but in principle, we could have solutions for both cases about not have the projects. For .NET framework, we could use the redirects. We know that there are some limitations there if the machine is locked down and this kind of thing, but even without the source, we can do that. And .NET Core, similar, you know. I think in 2 weeks, I should have time to kind of write those and put in a doc, in a README. So for the time being is where I want to stop with that. You know, I don't want to write the code for anything of that right now. I don't have the cycles for that. But then we at least document the solutions, and in the future, we can invest on that. Yeah. This was something that is in my mind, as I said. I plan to get to that. Do you guys want to bring anything else up? I think we are going through one of those moments that the activity has been a little bit concentrated with Rasmus right now.
I have one question. Is
Yep.
there any plan when we want to switch the POC branch to the main branch? Do you think when Paulo will be a good moment?
I think after we complete a bunch of integration tests on that side, I think that will be the right time to do that. You know.
Plus we have still logging to do.
Yes, we need logging too, you know. By the way, we have a question about that, right? Because the SDK uses event source to do logging. And we probably should find something consistent so the logs are published to the same location. So we probably need to add an event source for the auto instrumentation that we can integrate with them.
Yeah, so Serilog should have an event source plugin, which we might just be able to leverage.
Oh yeah, that's a good alternative, right? That will be just basically configuration then.
Right. Well, probably a little bit of vendoring too.
What about the logs from the native code?
Good question.
Not sure what we can do about that.
I know what we can do, but I don't think anybody's gonna like it. We can make ETW events and then publish them. So,
I mean, the other alternative is, yes, the SDK is using event source for its logging, but I personally find the file logs much easier to get and to debug problems. Whereas with the SDK, you have to opt in to the logging. You have to drop a file, and you got to go through all of these hoops, and it's not always clear where you need to drop that file. And so it can be frustrating to walk somebody through trying to enable the logging. Whereas if we do what the tracer's currently doing, we'll just always have logs available. It's more straightforward, and perhaps we could have a discussion with the SDK people about having an additional way to log things.
yeah, that's a very good point, because just having the files enabled there, in the fork that we use, a lot of times the first thing that I do is ask, oh, please send me the logs, and the logs are already there, rotating and everything. So you don't need to enable that before you ask for the log. That's a very good point, Chris. But in that sense, should we look at perhaps enabling the SDK logging from default and having some information?
Yeah, that's probably a good idea, at least for now.
Okay, so perhaps that what we do for the time being, we kind of relieve the user from those steps, because especially being auto instrumentation, where they are looking for less manual steps, we kind of should add that to the part of our SDK setup.
Yeah, and there may be some complexities there. It's probably been about 6 months since I played with that logging feature, but if I remember right, it writes a fixed size log file to disk, and then it just circularly overwrites
Yes.
that file. And I don't remember if there's much control over where that log file can be written. I just don't remember enough.
Yeah, I don't have that on the top of my mind either. I did that in the past, but yeah, didn't use for 2 years or something. So
Yeah.
No way that I remember that. Yeah, but these are very good things. When I play with the applications, I will try to play with the logs too, to get a feeling for that. But I will try to focus really more on what I talked about the paths for already built applications, right? So I'll try to focus more on that. Anyone has any topics, concerns?
Just one thought about maybe we can bubble up the logging from native level and use managed level.
Everything
Sorry,
okay, Rasmus?
I have a few issues here.
Yeah, here my issue is this.
Oh,
He's afraid because he's too little, and we are moving today to the other temporary house until my house is really done, and there is vacuum cleaner and stuff going on, and he's in panic.
and it's different place, especially. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Rasmus will be able to say what he intended to.
I just wanted to say that we can use events to bubble up the log information from native level and catch them like from the managed level and use the common libraries from the managed level.
So you mean publish the events as ETW and capture on the manage
Or system diagnostics, so it works also on Linux and macOS, right?
No, just maybe you can use the native
source.
event model.
Event pipe to using our. I said ETW, but my mind was really thinking event pipe. I don't know. We probably have something to write event pipe events in native. Do you have that on the runtime?
I didn't
Yeah,
think
but
that was
you-
available in framework, though.
But you are still in the same context, so you can use the .NET events native events for .NET. Event handlers and
No, but we are talking about the native, right?
Yeah.
So
Are you just saying that you're just talking about marshaling up the
yeah,
data?
exactly.
I see.
Assuming that it will load the managed stuff. Yeah.
At the same time, if we're just going to continue using file logs, I don't know that we need to do anything different. I mean, I personally find having the file-based logging for debugging these issues so much more useful, because there's been so many times where that it's harder to direct a customer to go and enable some sort of logging when they're trying to reproduce an issue. Even if you're simply just trying to request more detailed logs, oftentimes those detailed logs can impact performance. And so they don't want to do that on a production system.
Yeah. And I have the cases that even when we told the customer, okay, use this to collect the logs, then remove, then they forget, and then they reach back, say, hey, the performance now is much worse, you know? So
Yes.
yeah, so I think we then perhaps should really look at perhaps having the setting up the SDK in a way that is most following the pattern that we already have for the files. You know, I don't know if that will be possible or require some.
It will be possible for sure. I remember that when I was creating an anti-ransomware on using .NET Framework with ETW, it was possible to do some. I was just doing it for debugging purposes because it was easier to. It was easier for me to write just hook and use a normal log files than using purview for me. Then yeah. And I also agree that it's basically purview and those stuff is very powerful, but usually you don't need such power, and it's harder to use.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so I think this is something that we have to explore before we kind of at least settle on a model before we really think in doing the switch to this to the SDK POC branch. You know, at least we should kind of agree. Okay, we like the files. We would like to have a way to already enable the SDK to produce the needed files to enable, especially first releases. You know, later we can follow other pattern, but the first release we should just have this on by default, and any case we just ask for those files. All right. Anyone else want to bring anything up?
Has anybody started to play around with metrics in .NET?
Yeah,
I haven't yet either.
I'm back at doing stuff at the collector right now. I have some stuff that I want to upstream to the collector. So I'm kind of slow on my .NET side. So
I'll be on this. I will be on the same position probably next week.
Yeah, I've just had a teammate working on the OTLPA exporter for metrics for .NET. So
one question that I have in that regard, and Sijo already mentioned to me that we are gonna have some adapter. It's because there was some initial investment on that .NET diagnostic receiver that uses event pipe. Because metrics right now are published as via that, and we have the initial work done there. So we eventually planned to do more investment there to collect other information. But then with this change to these metrics, I'm not following close. I would like to know if that it's really a plan that we should keep long term. You know, because and this is more for the collector, but I think it affects everyone here, because right now the Windows experience is very good for the customers with the collector and .NET core and framework, because the collector is able to pull all those metrics from performance counters. But on Linux is not that good because we don't have those counters. So the way that we were looking for it was via the diagnostic receiver. But my understanding is that the runtime is also part of this metric change, the API. So I'm not sure if they are going to continue to publish as event pipe, or you need some shim from any side to send those as event pipe. So I have that in my backlog to check with Sijo and check the directions, but right now I don't know that. If anyone is aware of that, it would be great to update the people around here.
yeah, that was an open question for me too.
What is the source of these events that you're not sure are being published event pipe?
Because the thing is that my understanding is that the runtime is involved in this new metric API, and there will be changes there. What is not clear to me is because Sijo mentioned to me that there will be a shim from OpenTelemetry to publish the metrics that current comes via event pipe, the counters, for instance. And my understanding is that then it becomes a requirement to have the OpenTelemetry stuff. And for some cases, let me step back. the question that I have for the medium term, let's say, is if we should still invest on the diagnostic receiver that we started on the collector, or if we could switch to whatever shim OpenTelemetry produce to get all those metrics,
So I've had thoughts based on some customer experiences, specifically with auto instrumentation, or I should say bytecode-based instrumentation. Oftentimes, the cost of such instrumentation is too heavy for an application, or the application is really short-lived, in which case I've wanted to use a lighter weight approach and use an out of process model for listening to the data. And so that's where I see those receivers for the collector coming into play. Whereas for your bigger, more long-lived applications, it might be more convenient to just have it within your with an in-process receiver, which is what that shim would be doing, and then just have it all sent up together. And then you don't need a collector to pull that information. You can just send it up. And so I see value in both use cases, but that's just my opinion.
I see. Dave, one question that I have, perhaps, but as far as I understand, but it's that Microsoft is still going to be publishing those metrics via event pipe. I didn't hear anything different than that. But I was just wondering if this new API for metrics that is going to also be part of the runtime somehow changes anything of that picture.
So I don't know about specific details, but the metric stuff is happening with event sources, which makes it work with event pipe or ETW, because event sources are plugged into both systems. And so it should work, although I'm not involved in that work, so I can't tell you any of the details. Noah is the one that's driving that work, so Noah's actually a really good person to ask if you have specific technical questions.
Okay, right now I'm not at the level to know the details enough to have a direct question, but then if something comes, if I eventually reach that point, then I'll ping Noah.
Yep.
Yeah, it might be simple enough to test that you could just create a simple .NET 6 app that writes some metrics using the new API and just run .NET counters and give it the name of your source.
Yeah.
Pretty quick to validate.
Yeah, and we can try the collector, I have a script pretty simple to test this stuff with the collector, so I can test that. Yeah, I'll try to add that to my backlog. If I have updates, then I'll bring it next week. I'm giving the usual pause to see if people bring something up. All right, I hear silence, which is good. All right, everyone, nice to see everyone.
Thank you, bye.
Bye.
Bye.